The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built by a dozen different species over 3,000 years. Inside, representatives from 47 worlds sat in their environmental pods, each one adjusted for different gravity, atmosphere, and light requirements. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Lisa Grant, the first human to address the Galactic Council. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, dark blue with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Her hands were steady, but her heart raced. This was the moment humanity had worked toward for 3 years, ever since the Valorians had discovered Earth's radio signals and made first contact. High Counselor Thexaval, a being that looked like flowing water held together by light, gestured with what might have been a limb. Ambassador Grant, we have reviewed your species application for basic membership. Your world is classified as Category 9, the highest danger rating in our database. Lisa nodded. She had expected this. Earth was dangerous by galactic standards. High gravity, extreme weather, aggressive wildlife. But humans had lived there for hundreds of thousands of years. They knew how to handle it. We understand your concerns, High Counselor, Lisa said, but humans have proven we can coexist peacefully with other species. We've had no conflict since first contact. A counselor from the Crinian delegation, an insect-like being with 6 arms, clicked its mandibles. Your world has predators that hunt in packs, storms that destroy entire regions, seismic activity that reshapes continents. How does any intelligent species evolve in such conditions? Before Lisa could answer, Captain Kyle Morrison's voice came through her earpiece. He was on the human ship in orbit, monitoring the session. You're doing great, Lisa. Just stick to the prepared remarks. Lisa smiled slightly. Kyle had been her friend since the academy. He worried too much, but she appreciated it. We adapt, Lisa said simply. Humans are good at adapting. In the communications room of the human vessel, Danny Pierce sat at his station, barely 23 years old and fresh out of training. He had been assigned to send the official diplomatic greeting package to the Council's database. It was supposed to be simple. Just upload the file marked Diplomatic Introduction and press Send. Danny pulled up his screen and scrolled through the files. There were dozens of them. Cultural information, history, science, art. He found one labeled Emergency Protocols right next to Diplomatic Introduction. His finger hovered over the wrong file. He clicked it. The upload began. 30 seconds later, every council member's station pinged with a new data package from Earth. Danny leaned back, satisfied. Job done. He didn't notice the file name at the top of his screen. In the council chamber, Thexval paused mid-sentence. Ambassador Grant, we are receiving additional data from your vessel. Lisa frowned. That wasn't scheduled. I apologize, High Counselor. Let me check what that might be. Around the chamber, council members opened the file. What they saw made several of them recoil in their environmental pods. A Tethian counselor, small and bird-like, chirped in alarm. This document details survival procedures for planetary extinction events, multiple scenarios, nuclear warfare, biological weapons, asteroid impacts, volcanic winter. Another voice, this one from a silicon-based species that communicated through radio waves. There are protocols here for maintaining civilization during complete atmospheric collapse. This is marked as Standard Emergency Procedure. Lisa's blood ran cold. High Counselor, I believe there has been a mistake. But the council wasn't listening. They were reading through the file, and with each page, their fear grew. This section describes defending against megafauna attacks, the Crinian counselor said, its voice shaking. Creatures with 3-inch claws and bite forces exceeding 8,000 newtons. You classify these as common regional threats. That would be bears, Lisa said weakly. They're mostly harmless if you know what to do. Mostly harmless? Thexval's form rippled with what might have been shock. Ambassador, your species has detailed plans for surviving complete societal collapse. You have backup locations for government continuity, underground facilities designed to sustain populations for decades. This is military preparation. No, Lisa said firmly. Those are just precautions. Every responsible government has emergency plans. A counselor from the aquatic Selvex species spoke up, its voice bubbling through its water-filled pod. Ambassador, my species has existed for 12,000 years. We have never needed protocols for surviving our own planet trying to kill us. Your world does this regularly? Lisa opened her mouth to explain, but her earpiece crackled. It was Kyle, and he sounded tense. Lisa, what's happening down there? We're getting strange signals from the Council ships. They're moving to defensive positions. On the human ship, Danny Pierce finally realized his mistake. His face went pale as he stared at the file name on his screen. He had sent Earth's complete emergency management database, everything from earthquake response to pandemic containment, protocols for nuclear winter, procedures for repopulating after mass extinction events. He grabbed his communicator. Captain Morrison, sir, I made a mistake. A bad one. Kyle was already reading the file that had been sent. His jaw tightened. To anyone else, these were normal disaster plans. Every nation on Earth had them. But to species that had never faced existential threats, they looked like preparation for war. Get me a direct line to the council chamber, Kyle ordered. Back in the chamber, the council had erupted into chaos. Some species were demanding immediate quarantine of the Sol system. Others wanted to send military observers. A few, the more aggressive species, suggested preemptive action. Order! Thexval commanded, its voice cutting through the noise. Ambassador Grant, the Council requires an explanation. These documents suggest your species is either preparing for galactic war or is accustomed to threats that would end most civilizations. Lisa took a deep breath. The truth was complicated. Humans did face existential threats, not from other species but from their own world. Earthquakes, tsunamis, pandemics, asteroid near misses. Earth had tried to kill humanity 1,000 times over the millennia, and humanity had survived by planning, by preparing, by never giving up. But how could she explain that to species who had never known such danger? High Counselor, Lisa began carefully, what you're seeing is not preparation for war. It's preparation for survival. Earth is dangerous, yes. But these protocols exist because we've faced these threats before and learned from them. You have faced planetary extinction before? A counselor asked, incredulous. Multiple times, Lisa admitted. Supervolcano eruptions, ice ages, asteroid impacts. We lost most of our population once, reduced to just a few thousand individuals. But we survived, we learned, we made plans so it would never happen again. The chamber fell silent. The concept was alien to them. Most species in the galaxy had evolved on stable worlds, gentle places where intelligence grew slowly over millions of years without major interruptions. 3 cycles later, the council chamber was packed. Every delegation had sent additional representatives. Military advisors stood behind the counselors, and security had been tripled. The mood was tense. Ambassador Lisa Grant walked to the center of the chamber with Captain Kyle Morrison at her side. The Council had demanded a full explanation, and Earth Command had decided that military presence might actually help. Show strength, not weakness. Behind them walked Dr. Helen Wright, a xenobiologist who had studied alien life for the past 2 years, and Security Chief Brandon Cole, whose job was to keep the human delegation safe. Brandon's hand never strayed far from his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless if things went bad. High Counselor Thexval spoke first. Ambassador Grant, the Council has reviewed your emergency protocols extensively. We have questions. Many questions. Lisa nodded. We're prepared to answer all of them, High Counselor. Explain the protocol labeled Pandemic Response Level 7, a Crinian counselor demanded. It describes a scenario where 80% of your population is infected with a lethal pathogen. Your response includes quarantine zones, forced isolation, and continuation of government from secure bunkers. Has this happened? Helen stepped forward. Yes, counselor. Several times in our history, the most recent was about a century ago. A virus called influenza killed 50 million people. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. 50 million was more than the entire population of some council species. And your response? Thexaval asked. We developed vaccines, Helen said simply. We studied the virus, learned how it spread, and created immunity. Now we vaccinate against it routinely. A Tethian counselor fluttered its wings nervously. You inject your population with diseases? Weakened versions, Helen explained. It trains our immune systems to fight the real thing. It's basic medicine. Brandon leaned toward Kyle and whispered, They're looking at us like we're crazy. Kyle whispered back, Because to them we are. Another counselor spoke up, this one from a species that looked like crystals arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape. Your protocols mention training children in survival skills from age 5. You teach them to identify dangerous plants, avoid predators, and find shelter in hostile environments. Why would you subject your young to such knowledge? Lisa answered this time. Because our children need to understand their world. Earth has poisonous plants, venomous animals, and extreme weather. We teach them these things so they can be safe. We have educational recordings from your world, Thexval said. The chamber's display screens lit up, showing footage that Earth had sent as cultural material. The first video showed a hurricane, massive and destructive, tearing across a coastline. Buildings collapsed, trees were ripped from the ground. The wind speed indicators showed numbers that made several counselors gasp. This is a Category 5 hurricane, Lisa explained. They happen several times a year in some regions. And your people stay in these areas? A counselor asked, horrified. We build stronger, Kyle said. We develop better warning systems. We evacuate when necessary, and we rebuild when they pass. The next video showed a volcanic eruption. Lava flowed down mountainsides. Ash covered the sky. The heat readings were extreme. Beautiful, isn't it? Helen said without thinking. The chamber went silent. A Selvek counselor's translator struggled with the word. Beautiful? Dr. Wright, that is a planetary catastrophe. Helen realized her mistake but decided to lean into it. Yes, but it's also natural. Volcanoes create new land. They're part of Earth's geological cycle. We've learned to predict them, evacuate nearby areas, and even harness their energy for power. You use planetary disasters as energy sources? Thexaval sounded somewhere between impressed and terrified. Brandon spoke up for the first time. Hi, Counselor. May I ask a question? Proceed. Security Chief Cole? What's the most dangerous thing on your homeworld? Thexaval seemed confused by the question. We have some weather variations. Occasionally a storm will damage property. Why do you ask? Because on Earth, Brandon said carefully, we have animals that can kill a human in seconds. We have weather that can destroy cities. We have earthquakes that reshape continents. We have diseases that can spread across the globe in weeks. And we have plants that can poison you if you touch them wrong. He paused, looking around the chamber. We swim in oceans that have predators the size of your ships. We climb mountains where the air is too thin to breathe properly. We explore caves that could collapse at any moment. And we do these things for fun. The chamber was absolutely silent. Kyle added, We also live in areas with extreme heat and extreme cold. Some humans live in deserts where temperatures exceed 50 degrees. Others live in Arctic regions where it drops to -40. We adapt. A counselor from a species that resembled floating jellyfish spoke hesitantly. Captain Morrison, I have studied your biology. Your species can survive in temperature ranges that span 90 degrees or more. You can consume toxins like ethanol and capsaicin without dying. You can heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. How is this possible? Helen smiled. Evolution. Counselor, Earth doesn't forgive weakness. Species that couldn't adapt went extinct. There have been 5 major extinction events on our planet. Each one wiped out most life, but life always came back, stronger and more resilient. And humans survived all 5? The counselor asked. No, Helen admitted. Humans only evolved after the last one, but our ancestors survived. Small mammals that could hide, that could eat almost anything, that could live in the harshest conditions. We inherited that resilience. Thexaval's form rippled. The Council is concerned, Ambassador. Your species appears to be designed for warfare. High pain tolerance, rapid healing, ability to function under extreme stress, persistence hunting capabilities, throwing accuracy that suggests weapon use, binocular vision for targeting. And now we learn you train from childhood to survive in hostile conditions. Lisa had expected this. High Counselor, we're not warriors by design. We're survivors. Everything you describe comes from living on a world that constantly challenges us. We develop these traits to live, not to fight. But you could fight, a Crinian military advisor said bluntly. If you chose to. Kyle met the advisor's compound eyes. Every species can fight if they choose to. The question is whether they do. Humans have had the capability to destroy ourselves for over a century. We have weapons that could turn Earth into a dead rock, but we haven't used them. We chose cooperation instead. Brandon pulled up a file on his tablet and sent it to the chamber display. With the Council's permission, I'd like to show something. Thexval gestured agreement. The screen showed footage of a human rescue operation. A building had collapsed during an earthquake. Emergency workers were digging through rubble, searching for survivors. They worked for days without stopping, pulling people from the wreckage. This was 10 years ago, Brandon said. Magnitude 7.8 earthquake, thousands trapped. These rescue workers are volunteers. They come from all over Earth to help in disasters. They risk their lives to save strangers. Another video played. Firefighters running into a burning building. Medical workers treating plague victims without modern protection. Coast Guard jumping into rough seas to save drowning sailors. You see warriors, Brandon continued. We see people who refuse to give up. People who help each other survive. That's what Earth taught us. Not how to destroy, but how to endure together. A younger counselor, one Lisa hadn't seen before, spoke up. I have a question that may seem odd. Do humans truly consume poison voluntarily? Helen laughed. You mean alcohol and spicy food? Yes. Alcohol is ethanol, which is toxic. We process it through our livers. And capsaicin, the chemical that makes food spicy, literally triggers pain receptors. But we've learned to enjoy both in moderation. Why? The counselor asked, genuinely confused. Because it feels good, Helen said with a shrug. Humans seek out experiences, even uncomfortable ones. We climb mountains because they're there. We explore deep oceans because they're unknown. We eat spicy food because it's exciting. We're curious by nature. Kyle noticed several counselors conferring with their military advisors. The body language wasn't good. Fear was turning into suspicion, and suspicion could turn into hostility. High Counselor, Kyle said firmly. I understand the Council's concerns, but I want to be clear about something. Humans didn't ask to evolve on a death world. We didn't choose to develop these survival traits. We simply did what any intelligent species would do. We adapted to our environment. He gestured to the display, which still showed Earth. That world made us strong, yes, but it also made us compassionate. When you're constantly facing existential threats, you learn that cooperation is the only way to survive. Every human culture, despite our differences, understands this basic truth. We're stronger together. Lisa added, "The protocols you saw aren't preparation for war against the galaxy. They're the lessons of a species that has survived despite impossible odds. We want to share those lessons, not use them as weapons." Thexval was quiet for a long moment. Finally, the High Counselor spoke. "The Council will adjourn to discuss this matter. However, I must inform you that several delegations are calling for immediate quarantine of your system. Others suggest continuous monitoring. A few are proposing more aggressive measures." "How aggressive?" Brandon asked quietly. "That is what we must discuss," Thexval said. "This session is adjourned." Observer Kylan sat in the small scout ship, his feathers ruffled with anxiety. As a Tethian scientist, he had volunteered for this mission because he was curious about the Deathworlders. Now, approaching Earth's orbital stations, he was beginning to regret that curiosity. "Approaching human space station now," the pilot announced. "Receiving docking clearance." Kylan looked out the viewport at the structure ahead. It was large, built from metal and composite materials that seemed crude compared to Tethian technology. But it was functional, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. "They use rotation for gravity?" asked Mira, another observer. She was Valorian, her form shimmering with nervous energy. "How primitive." "Primitive, but effective," Kylan noted. He pulled up his scanner and checked the station's specifications. His feathers stood on end when he saw the numbers. "The radiation levels out here would kill most species within hours. How are they surviving?" The answer came through the communication system. A human voice, young and cheerful. "This is Lieutenant Amy Rogers welcoming the Galactic Observer Team. We've prepared a safe docking port with appropriate environmental controls. Commander Jake Sullivan is waiting to give you a tour." Amy's shuttle pulled alongside the observation ship. Through the window, Kylan could see her clearly. She was small by human standards, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore what looked like a simple flight suit, and she was smiling. "She seems friendly enough," Mira observed. "Remember what the briefing said," Kylan warned. "Humans evolved as persistence predators. They appear friendly to get close to prey." Amy's voice came through again. "I can hear you, by the way. Your communication channel is broadcasting, and just so you know, we don't eat people. We're vegetarian options available if you're worried." Kylan's translator struggled with what he thought might be humor. Humans used humor in uncomfortable situations. He had read about this. The docking process was smooth. The observation team entered the station through a reinforced airlock. Commander Jake Sullivan met them inside, a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He extended his hand in the human greeting gesture, then remembered himself and bowed instead. "Welcome to Station Liberty," Jake said. "We're glad to have you here. I understand you want to observe Earth and learn about human capabilities." "That is correct, Commander," Kylan replied, his translator converting his chirps and whistles to standard galactic. "The Council wishes to understand how your species survives on such a dangerous world." Jake smiled. Though Kylan noticed it didn't quite reach his eyes. The commander knew why they were really here. Assessment, threat evaluation, fear. "Well, let's start with the station," Jake said. "We built this 20 years ago as our first permanent orbital facility. It houses about 200 people and serves as a hub for lunar traffic and deep space missions." He led them through the corridors. Kylan noted everything. The walls were thick, reinforced. Emergency equipment was everywhere. Pressure suits hung in lockers every 50 meters. Blast doors could seal sections instantly. "You have extensive safety measures," Mira observed. "Space is dangerous," Jake said simply. "We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. We've had 3 major emergencies since the station opened. Hull breaches, system failures, solar flares. Each time, the crew handled it and made repairs. You've had hull breaches? Kylan's voice rose in pitch. Multiple times? Sure, Jake said, as if discussing the weather. Micrometeorites, mostly. Small holes that we patch quickly. Once we had a larger impact that took out a whole section. Lost 2 people that day. He paused at a memorial wall. Names were engraved on metal plates. These are the crew members who died in the line of duty. 12 people in 20 years. We honor them by continuing their work. The observation team fell silent. On most council worlds, a single death in space would trigger a full investigation and possible shutdown of the program. Humans had lost 12 and kept going. Amy joined them, carrying equipment. Commander, I've got the shuttle ready if they want to see Earth from above. Are you sure that's wise? Kylan asked. Approaching the planet seems unnecessary. We can observe from here. You can't really understand Earth from orbit, Amy said. You need to see it up close. Don't worry, we'll stay in the shuttle. No need to actually land unless you want to. Killen definitely did not want to land on the Deathworld, but he also needed to complete his mission. Very well. We will accompany you. The shuttle was smaller than Kylan expected, designed for quick atmospheric entry and exit. Amy took the pilot seat with casual confidence. Jake sat beside her while the observation team strapped into the passenger section. Buckle up tight, Amy advised. Entry can get a little bumpy. Bumpy turned out to be a massive understatement. The shuttle hit Earth's atmosphere and immediately began shaking. Kylan gripped his seat as the vessel bounced and rattled. Through the window, he could see the hull glowing red from friction heat. Is this normal? Mira shouted over the noise. Totally normal, Amy called back. We do this several times a day. Just wait until we hit the storm system. Storm system? Kylan barely got the words out before the shuttle entered a massive bank of clouds. Lightning flashed around them. Wind buffeted the small vessel. Rain hammered the hull. Amy navigated through it like she was taking a casual drive. She pointed out the window. That's Hurricane Patricia forming off the coast. Should be a Category 3 by tomorrow. We're tracking it to make sure no one's in danger. Kylan looked at the swirling mass of clouds that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The energy readings were enormous. This single storm had more power than some species used in a year. You name your disasters? Mira asked weakly. Makes them easier to track, Jake explained. We get dozens of these every year. Hurricanes, typhoons, cyclones, different names for the same thing depending on where they form. The shuttle dropped below the clouds. Kylan gasped. Earth spread out below them, a patchwork of blues and greens and browns. It was beautiful and terrifying. That's the Pacific Ocean, Amy said, gesturing at the vast expanse of water. Deepest parts go down 11 kilometers. We've explored most of it, though there are still some areas we haven't reached. You go down there? Kylan couldn't imagine it. The pressure at those depths would crush any Tethian vessel. In specialized submarines, Jake confirmed. Deep-sea research is important. We've found whole ecosystems down there, life forms that survive in conditions we thought were impossible. Amy took them along a coastline. Kylan saw human cities, massive structures housing millions. Then she flew inland, showing them mountains that reached almost 9 kilometers high. Mount Everest, Amy said. People climb it for sport. About 800 successful summits a year, though some people die trying. The air up there is too thin to breathe without oxygen tanks. And they do this voluntarily? Mira sounded faint. The challenge is the point, Jake said. Humans like pushing boundaries. We climb dangerous mountains, dive to impossible depths, explore places that want to kill us. It's how we learn and grow. The shuttle flew over a volcanic region. Kylan could see lava flowing from cracks in the earth, rivers of molten rock that destroyed everything they touched. Kilauea, Amy noted. Been erupting continuously for decades. People live nearby and just deal with it. They evacuate when necessary and rebuild when the lava stops. Kylan was taking notes furiously. Everything he saw confirmed the Council's fears. Humans lived in conditions that would end most civilizations. And they did it casually, like it was nothing special. They flew to the night side of the planet. Amy brought the shuttle low over a city, lights blazing below. "That's Tokyo," she said. "Sits right on top of a major fault line. Earthquakes happen regularly. They've engineered every building to handle the shaking. Life goes on." "How many people live there?" Mira asked. "About 38 million in the metro area," Jake said. The number stunned Kylan. 38 million people living on top of a geological disaster waiting to happen. And they stayed because they had learned how to survive it. Amy took them to one more location, the moon. As they approached, Kylan saw the human lunar bases, small domes and habitats scattered across the gray surface. "We've had a permanent presence here for 15 years, Jake explained. Mining operations, research stations, even some small-scale manufacturing. About 500 people live here full-time." On a dead rock with no atmosphere? Kylan was beyond surprise now. "It's not dead," Amy said softly. "It's quiet, peaceful, and it's ours. Humans left their homeworld and reached for the moon. It's one of our proudest achievements." She brought the shuttle down near a memorial site. Through the window, Kylan could see footprints preserved in lunar dust, American flags planted by early astronauts, and plaques commemorating the first humans to walk on another world. "Those footprints are over 150 years old," Jake said quietly. "They'll last for millions of years because there's no wind or water to erase them. A permanent reminder that humans dared to dream bigger than their world." The observation team was silent on the flight back to the station. Kylan spent the time reviewing his notes and recordings. What would he tell the Council? Back on Station Liberty, Jake offered them a meal, but the team declined. They needed to compile their report. "I hope we helped you understand us better," Amy said as they prepared to leave. "You did," Kylan replied honestly, "though I am not certain the Council will like what we learned." "What did you learn?" Jake asked. Kylan considered his words carefully. "We learned that humans are not preparing for war. You are preparing for survival. Every moment, every day, your entire civilization is built on the assumption that disaster could strike at any time, and you must be ready." The council chamber was in chaos when the alert came through. High Counselor Thexval was mid-sentence, discussing the human question, when every console in the room began screaming warnings. "Incoming distress call from the Selvek border station," a technician shouted. "They report contact with unknown hostile forces, heavy casualties, requesting immediate evacuation support." Ambassador Lisa Grant felt her blood turn cold. She looked at Kyle Morrison, who had gone rigid beside her. They both knew what this meant. Thexval's form turned dark blue, a Valorian sign of distress. "Display the transmission." The main screen lit up with the image of a Selvek commander, his aquatic features twisted in terror. Behind him, explosions rocked his ship. "They came out of nowhere, thousands of ships. They ignore all communication. They're just destroying everything. They're consuming our stations, our ships, our people." The image cut to external cameras. Lisa's hand went to her mouth. The attacking ships were organic-looking, moving like insects, swarming over Selvek vessels and literally eating through the hulls. "Karvesh," an old counselor whispered. The word spread through the chamber like poison. "What are Karvesh?" Kyle asked quietly. Observer Kylan, who had been presenting his report on humanity, answered in a shaking voice. "The swarm. They appear every 1,000 years from deep space. They consume biological matter and use it to grow more ships. No species has ever successfully fought them. We can only evacuate and wait for them to leave." "How long does that take?" Lisa asked. "Years," Kylan said. "Sometimes decades. They strip worlds bare and move on when there is nothing left to consume. Another transmission came through. A Krinian world reporting attacks. Then a Tethian colony. The Karvesh were hitting multiple systems simultaneously. Thexval turned to the council. Activate all evacuation protocols. Priority 1 is preservation of genetic samples and knowledge. We must save what we can. Just save? Kyle stood up. You're not going to fight? Fight with what, Captain Morrison? A military advisor snapped. The Karvesh are resistant to energy weapons. Their biology allows them to survive in vacuum. They reproduce faster than we can destroy them. Fighting them is suicide. Lisa felt her tablet vibrate, a message from Earth Command. She read it quickly, her eyes widening. Kyle, she said quietly, Earth wants to help. Help how? Thexval asked, its form rippling with confusion. You have 47 ships in your entire fleet. The Karvesh number in the hundreds of thousands. We've fought extinction before, Lisa said, multiple times. We know what it takes to survive. A Krinian counselor laughed bitterly. You think your Deathworld experience translates to galactic warfare? The Karvesh are not a hurricane or a virus, they are a force of nature. So was the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, Kyle said quietly. Earth has a 5-kilometer crater from where it hit. Most life died, but some survived, and from those survivors, we evolved. Before anyone could respond, Fleet Admiral Patricia Hayes appeared on the screen. She was a woman in her 60s, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. She wore her uniform with quiet authority. High Counselor Thexval, this is Fleet Admiral Hayes commanding Earth's Rapid Response Fleet. We're 3 days out from the Council Station. I understand you have a Karvesh situation. Admiral, Thexval said carefully, we appreciate your concern, but this is not a fight you can win. The Karvesh have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Maybe, Patricia said, but those civilizations didn't evolve on Earth. Permission to deploy my forces to the Selvek border? Admiral, I cannot authorize a suicide mission. Then don't authorize it, Patricia said flatly. We're going anyway. Those are people dying out there. Humans don't walk away from that. Lisa stepped forward. High Counselor, let me make a case. The Karvesh are biological, correct? They consume organic matter and are resistant to standard energy weapons. Correct, Kalen confirmed. Then you've been fighting them wrong, Lisa said. You've been using sophisticated technology against a biological threat. Earth has spent thousands of years fighting biological threats, invasive species, diseases, parasites. We know how to kill things that won't die easily. A Valorian military advisor spoke up. What are you proposing? Kyle pulled up files on his tablet and sent them to the chamber display. These are Earth's extinction protocols for invasive species, chemical weapons, biological agents, environmental manipulation. Things you consider barbaric, things you probably banned thousands of years ago. You want us to use poison? A counselor asked, horrified. We want to use everything, Patricia said from the screen. The Karvesh don't follow rules. Why should we? Thexval was silent for a long moment. Even if I agreed, the Council would never approve such methods. We are a civilized society. Civilized societies die when they're not willing to do what's necessary, Patricia said. We're not asking for approval. We're telling you what we're going to do. You can help or get out of the way. Admiral Hayes, Thexval said carefully, if you attack the Karvesh with forbidden weapons, the Council will have no choice but to consider you a threat. Then consider us a threat, Patricia said, right after we save your people. The screen went dark. An uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. Lisa took a deep breath. High Counselor, I know this is hard to hear, but humanity has survived 5 mass extinctions, not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we're willing to do whatever it takes. No method is too crude, no tactic too desperate. When existence is on the line, pride doesn't matter. The Karvesh have acid blood, Kylan said weakly. They spray it when injured. It melts through most materials. We have acids on Earth that make theirs look gentle, Kyle replied. We also have bases, toxins, and compounds that dissolve organic matter in seconds. We've been at war with nature for our entire history. We know every dirty trick there is. Observer Kylan looked at his notes from the Earth visit. He thought about the humans swimming with predators, living on fault lines, climbing mountains that killed them. He thought about their emergency protocols, their backup plans, their absolute refusal to give up. "High Counselor," Kylan said slowly, "I believe we should let them try." "You cannot be serious," another counselor objected. "I am completely serious," Kylan said. "We have been running from the Karvesh for recorded history. Maybe it is time to stop running. And if anyone in the galaxy knows how to fight a threat that seems impossible to kill, it is the species that fight such threats every day of their lives." Thexval's form shifted through several colors, indicating internal conflict. "If I allow this and you fail, humanity will be seen as having provoked the Karvesh. The Council will demand sanctions." "And if we succeed?" Lisa asked. "Then we will have much to discuss about humanity's place in the galaxy." Patricia Hayes appeared on screen again. "We're detecting Karvesh movement toward the Tethian colonies. 4 million civilians. How long until evacuation is complete?" 2 weeks, a Tethian counselor said, voice breaking. "Then we don't have 2 weeks," Patricia said. "We have maybe 48 hours before they arrive. Captain Morrison, are you still at the council station?" "Yes, Admiral," Kyle said. "Good. I'm transmitting tactical data. Show them what we're planning. Let them decide if they want to help or hide." Files flooded the council's systems. Lisa watched as counselors reviewed the plans. She saw disgust on some faces, horror on others. But she also saw something else. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope. The plans were brutal. Chemical weapons designed to dissolve organic matter. Biological agents that would disrupt Karvesh reproduction. Environmental tactics that would use the vacuum of space itself as a weapon. Nothing was elegant, nothing was sophisticated. It was all crude, effective, and completely ruthless. "This is barbaric," a counselor whispered. "Yes," Lisa agreed. "But it's also proven. Earth didn't become a death world by accident. It became that way through billions of years of life fighting life. Every species on our planet is engaged in constant warfare for survival. We didn't invent these tactics. We learned them from nature itself." Thexval made a decision. "The Council will provide support, ships, resources, whatever Admiral Hayes requires. But understand this, Ambassador Grant. If this fails, if the Karvesh intensify their attacks because of human intervention, the Council will not protect your species." "We understand," Lisa said. "But if we succeed, you'll know something important about humanity." "What is that?" Thexval asked. "That we're not the monsters you fear," Lisa said quietly. "We're the monsters that fight other monsters. And we're very, very good at it." Kyle's communicator buzzed. A message from Patricia. The fleet was moving into position. Combat would begin in 30 hours. The council chamber emptied as delegations rushed to coordinate with their home systems. Lisa stood with Kyle and Kylan looking at the tactical displays. The Karvesh arrived at the Tethian colonies like a plague of locusts made of metal and chitin. Thousands of organic ships, each one pulsing with hostile life, descended on the civilian stations with single-minded hunger. Fleet Admiral Patricia Hayes watched from the bridge of her flagship, the Endeavor. Around her, 47 human vessels prepared for combat. They were badly outnumbered, but that had never stopped humanity before. "Status report," Patricia ordered. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," her tactical officer said. "Counselor forces are holding position at the evacuation points. They're not engaging." Patricia understood. The Council species had tried fighting the Karvesh before. It never worked. So they evacuated and mourned and rebuilt. It was logical. It was safe. It was also surrender. "Captain Morrison is requesting permission to join the fight," communications reported. "Denied," Patricia said firmly. "Kyle stays at the council station with the ambassador. If this goes wrong, someone needs to speak for Earth." She pulled up the tactical display. The Karvesh moved in recognizable patterns, swarming targets and consuming them completely before moving on. They were efficient, deadly, and according to every galactic database, unstoppable. Patricia smiled grimly. Galactic databases had never met Earth. "All ships," she broadcast on the fleet channel, "commence Operation Deathworld." The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first group, led by Captain Vincent Cruz on the destroyer Ranger, moved to engage the Karvesh directly. Their weapons weren't standard Council-issue energy cannons. They were modified industrial tools, mining lasers, and chemical sprayers. "Ranger engaging," Vincent reported. His ship dove into the Karvesh swarm, guns blazing. The chemicals they sprayed were simple, concentrated acids and bases that Earth had been manufacturing for centuries. Nothing sophisticated, nothing the Council would call advanced, but they worked. Karvesh ships began dissolving where the chemicals hit. Their organic hulls, designed to resist energy weapons, had no defense against simple chemistry. The acid ate through their armor like water through paper. "Confirmed kills," Vincent shouted. "The chemicals are effective." But there were too many. For every Karvesh ship destroyed, 3 more took its place. That's when the second group attacked. Lieutenant Amy Rogers led a squadron of fast attack ships through the Karvesh formation. They weren't there to fight. They were there to spread infection. "Deploying bioagent," Amy reported. Her ships released clouds of specially designed bacteria into the space around the Karvesh. The bacteria, engineered from Earth microorganisms, began to attach to the alien vessels. Within minutes, the effect was visible. Karvesh ships started showing signs of decay. Their hulls developed holes. Their organic systems began failing. The bacteria was doing what bacteria did best, breaking down organic matter and reproducing. "Bioagent is spreading through their formation," Amy called out. "They're trying to contain it, but it's moving too fast." On the Endeavor, Patricia watched the Karvesh swarm begin to falter. But they were adapting, pulling back infected ships and destroying them before the bacteria could spread further. "Time for Phase 3, Patricia said. "Commander Sullivan, you're up." Jake Sullivan, now commanding the heavy cruiser Valiant, moved his ship toward a nearby moon. The Karvesh had ignored the lifeless rock, focusing on the stations with people. That was their mistake. "Initiating lunar bombardment," Jake reported. His ship fired specially designed missiles at the moon's surface. They weren't explosive. They were kinetic, designed to create maximum debris. The impacts threw up massive clouds of lunar dust and rock. The debris spread quickly in the low gravity, creating a field of high-velocity particles. "Debris field established," Jake said. "Hurting the swarm now." Human ships began a coordinated retreat, drawing the Karvesh toward the debris field. The aliens, sensing weakness, pursued eagerly. They flew directly into a cloud of rock fragments traveling at thousands of meters per second. The effect was devastating. Karvesh ships, with their soft organic hulls, were shredded by the impacts. Hundreds died in minutes, their bodies torn apart by simple physics. No advanced weapons needed, just rocks moving very fast. Observer Kylan watched from the Council observation post, his feathers trembling. They're using the environment itself as a weapon, the moon, the debris, the vacuum of space. Nothing is too simple for them to weaponize. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood beside him. "On Earth, we learn to use everything. A stick becomes a tool. A river becomes power. A mountain becomes shelter. Humans don't need sophisticated weapons. We just need to understand how things work." "But they're still outnumbered," Kylan said. The Karvesh were regrouping, learning from their losses. They began avoiding the debris field and the chemical sprayers. That's when Patricia played her final card. "All ships, fall back to the radiation zone," she ordered. Every human vessel retreated toward a nearby star that was entering its red giant phase. The radiation levels were intense, lethal to most organic life. "Admiral," her tactical officer warned, "crew exposure is approaching dangerous levels." "I know," Patricia said. "Sound the radiation alarm. All personnel to shielded sections. Medical teams on standby." The human ships dove closer to the star, using its radiation as a shield. The Karvesh, desperate to finish their prey, followed. "Distance to star critical," the tactical officer reported. "Hull temperature rising. Radiation at 70% lethal." "Hold position," Patricia ordered. "They're almost in range." The Karvesh swarm entered the radiation zone. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, their ships began to fail. The intense radiation, harmless to metal and electronics, was deadly to their organic systems. They tried to retreat, but the human ships blocked their escape, herding them deeper into the lethal zone. "Radiation at 90% lethal," the officer said. "Admiral, we need to pull back." "Not yet," Patricia said through gritted teeth. She could feel the radiation poisoning starting, a deep ache in her bones. Around the ship, crew members were getting sick, but they held position. The Karvesh fleet died in the radiation. Ships went dark. Movement ceased. Thousands of organic vessels became floating corpses in the space around the dying star. "Now," Patricia ordered. "All ships, emergency burn. Get us clear." The human fleet retreated at maximum speed. Behind them, the Karvesh swarm was broken. Not destroyed completely, but damaged enough that the survivors fled back into deep space. At the council station, alarms began to sound. Medical emergency. The human fleet was requesting immediate medical support. Lisa ran to the docking bay where the first human ships were arriving. She found Patricia being carried off the Endeavor on a stretcher, her skin showing signs of severe radiation burns. "Did we win?" Patricia asked weakly. "You won," Lisa said, tears in her eyes. "The Karvesh are retreating. The colonies are safe." "Good," Patricia said. "Tell the council we're available for consultation on pest control." Then she passed out. 72 hours later, the council chamber was full again. Every delegation attended. High Counselor Thexval stood at the center, its form a complex swirl of colors indicating profound emotion. "The council has reviewed the battle data," Thexval said. "For the first time in recorded history, the Karvesh swarm has been driven off before consuming its target. Preliminary reports suggest they suffered 70% casualties and have withdrawn to deep space." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species cheered, others argued. A few sat in stunned silence. "This was achieved by a species we feared," Thexval continued. "A species we nearly quarantined. A species we thought was preparing for war against us." Kyle Morrison stood in the audience, his arm in a sling from radiation exposure. Beside him, Observer Kylan was taking notes frantically. "Ambassador Grant," Thexval said, "the council wishes to understand how your species accomplished this." Lisa stepped forward. She had spent the last 3 days helping coordinate medical care for the human crews. 87 humans had died from radiation exposure. Another 140 were in serious condition. But 4 million Tethians were alive because of them. "We did what humans always do," Lisa said simply. "We looked at a problem everyone said was impossible, and we found a way. We used chemistry, biology, physics, and environmental factors. Nothing sophisticated, just the basic tools that Earth taught us to use." "You used barbaric methods," a counselor objected. "Chemical weapons, biological agents, radiation exposure." "Yes," Lisa agreed. "And they worked. Because the Karvesh are a biological threat and we're experts at fighting biological threats." Earth has been training us for this fight for hundreds of thousands of years. Every virus, every predator, every disaster, they all taught us how to survive. Kylan spoke up. I have completed my report on humanity. With the Council's permission, I would like to share my conclusions. Thexval gestured agreement. Humans are not warriors, Kylan said. They are survivors. Everything we feared about them, their strength, their resilience, their refusal to surrender, these traits evolved because they had no choice. Earth demanded perfection or death, and humanity chose perfection. He pulled up images from his Earth visit, the hurricanes, the volcanoes, the predators, the diseases. We called Earth a death world, Kylan continued. But we misunderstood what that meant. A death world doesn't create killers, it creates protectors. Because when you face death every day, you learn the value of life. When you struggle to survive, you learn to help others survive. Humans fight extinction by ensuring no one faces it alone. The chamber was silent. The transmission we received, Kylan said, the emergency protocols, they weren't a threat. They were a promise that humanity would never give up, that they would fight any threat with every tool available, that they would protect not just themselves, but anyone who needed protection. He looked at Lisa. We feared the wrong thing. We should not have feared humanity's strength. We should have hoped for their friendship. Thexval's form turned a warm gold color, indicating approval. The Council has a decision to make. Humanity has proven capable of great violence, but also great courage. The question is whether we can trust them. You can trust us, Lisa said firmly, because Earth taught us something else. When you survive together, you thrive together. We don't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to help it survive. Just like we've helped each other survive on Earth for thousands of years. Patricia Hayes, bandaged but conscious, appeared on the screen from the medical bay. High Counselor, I have a request. My crew survived radiation that would kill most species. We did it with medical techniques developed on Earth, fighting our own sun's radiation. We'd like to share those techniques with the Council, free of charge. Why would you do that? Thexval asked. Because that's what humans do, Patricia said. We survive, and then we teach others how to survive. It's the only way any of us make it. The Council voted. It took 3 hours of debate. But in the end, the decision was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council, not as junior members, not as probationary. Full membership with all rights and responsibilities. But more than that, humanity was invited to establish a new institution. The Survival Sciences Academy, a place where humans would teach other species the Deathworld protocols. How to fight extinction. How to survive impossible odds. How to turn disaster into opportunity. Kylan would be the first non-human student. Months later, Lisa stood in the Academy's first classroom, looking at students from 15 different species. They had come to learn from the Deathworlders. Welcome, Lisa said with a smile. Before we begin, I need to explain something. These protocols aren't elegant. They aren't sophisticated. They're brutal, practical, and sometimes crude, because that's what survival requires. A young Tethian student raised a wing. Will they keep us safe? They've kept humans safe for hundreds of thousands of years, Lisa replied, through ice ages and plagues and asteroids and wars. They'll keep you safe too, because the most important lesson Earth taught us is simple. She pulled up an image of Earth, beautiful and deadly, spinning in the darkness. Life wants to survive, Lisa said. And if you're willing to fight for it, to adapt, to never give up, then nothing can stop you. Not the Karvesh, not extinction, nothing. The classroom erupted in questions, students eager to learn, species ready to understand, and somewhere in deep space, the Karvesh swarm received a message. It was transmitted on all frequencies, in every known language, a simple warning. This space is protected by the Galactic Council and the Terran Defense Force. Threats to sentient life will be met with extreme prejudice. We are the species that survived the Deathworld, and we protect our own. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Karvesh changed course. They had learned what the galaxy was just discovering. Humanity wasn't the threat. They were the answer. "Are you certain this will work?" Kylan asked. "No," Kyle admitted. "But we're certain we have to try." "Why?" Kylan genuinely wanted to understand. "These are not your people. You owe the Council nothing. Why risk your lives for strangers?" Lisa smiled sadly. "Because that's what humans do. When someone is in danger, we help. It's not logical. It's not strategic. It's just who we are. Earth taught us that we're all in this together." That lesson applies whether we're talking about 7 billion humans or 47 different species. As they left the chamber to prepare, Kylan watched them go. The Deathworlders were about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. He just hoped the galaxy was ready for the answer. "That's life on Earth," Jake said with a shrug. "For you, perhaps," Kylan said. "For most species in the galaxy, such constant vigilance would be exhausting. We would collapse under the stress. But you thrive on it." As the observation ship departed, Kylan began writing his report. He chose his words with care. The Council feared humanity's strength, but Kylan had learned something more important. Humans were strong not because they wanted to be, but because they had no choice. Earth demanded strength or death. And humanity had chosen strength over and over again for hundreds of thousands of years. The question now was whether the galaxy could accept such a species as equals, or would fear win and force the Council to make a terrible choice. "Or much worse," Lisa replied. She looked at Helen and Brandon. "They're scared. We need to show them there's nothing to fear." "How do we do that?" Helen asked. Brandon looked out at the stars. "We wait, and we hope they make the right choice." But even as he said it, he could see alien warships taking up positions around the human vessel. The galaxy had made its decision. Humanity was a threat, and threats needed to be contained. Thexval's form darkened, a sign of deep thought in Valorian culture. "The Council will need time to process this information. This session is adjourned. We will reconvene in 3 cycles." As the Council members filed out, Lisa stood alone in the center of the chamber. Through the windows, she could see Earth in the distance, a blue marble wrapped in white clouds, beautiful and deadly. Home. Kyle's voice came through her earpiece. "Lisa, I'm sorry. Danny just told me what happened. We're trying to fix this." "I know," Lisa said quietly. "But Kyle, I don't think we can fix this. They've seen who we are, what we've survived, and they're terrified." She was right. As the Council ships departed, emergency transmissions were already spreading across the galaxy. The Deathworlders had revealed their true nature, and the civilized galaxy had no idea what to do about it.